What's going on, guys? Dr. Andrew Fix back for another episode here on the Code. Thank you so much. I say this all the time. Thank you so much for tuning in, listening to this episode, choosing to spend a few minutes with us. This is going to be a relatively short and sweet episode. I know I've said that on a lot of these solo ones before, and then I get into the weeds on a few things, but we'll try and keep that from happening today. Keep this one brief. But however you're tuning in, however you're consuming this podcast, thank you for joining us, whether it's your first episode or your 100 plus, however many you've joined us for. Thank you so much. What we're going to talk about today is that, phrase or that saying that you've probably heard before: knowledge is power. And I'm going to tell you why that's not actually the case, right? And we've probably all heard people say that before. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And that's not really a phrase that ever really gets, questioned, or no one ever really pushes back on that. And I forget who I was speaking with, but I was having a conversation about this, and this idea or this concept came up. And, they were saying, knowledge really isn't power, right? A lot of people that are in powerful positions, or a lot of people that do great things, have a lot of knowledge, but knowledge by itself is useless. It's just information, right? It's just information until you are able to, or you choose to do something with it, right? So knowledge is not power. Knowledge without action is useless, right? Just like that phrase, creativity without action is just imagination, right? Or, goals without action are just dreams, right? Like, unless you choose to do something with the information that you have, what good is that information? And I'm sitting here wearing a Whoop, right? A wearable device that tracks and gives us all sorts of information. It tells us what our heart rate variability is. It tells us about our respiratory rate. It tells us about our, oxygen saturation, our skin temperature, heart rate. And all those things are just numbers. They're just information. And if you're not going to do anything with those numbers, then what's the point, right? And I've fallen into that trap. I've fallen into that trap with the Whoop, where I actually ended up going like a year or more without wearing it, because I found myself doing that exact thing. I found myself having all of the data, having all of the numbers, but then I wasn't taking that and doing anything with it. I had previously made some lifestyle changes, things like trying to set a more consistent sleep and wake schedule, things like trying to avoid alcohol in the evenings so that it doesn't disrupt the sleep quality as much, just trying to cut down on alcohol in general. Things like trying to avoid late meals so that your body's not trying to digest, or, wear an eye mask when I travel so I can control the darkness so I can get better sleep quality. But then I wasn't really doing anything more from like a lifestyle standpoint. I wasn't taking those numbers, doing anything with it. So I decided, why am I paying for this? Why am I using this Whoop? Why do I have it if I'm not going to do anything with it? And it's the same thing with, people do this with gym memberships. They pay 10 or 30 bucks a month to their gym. They don't go. Eventually they end up canceling it, because having the gym membership without using it doesn't help you get any closer to your goals. Just like knowledge without action is not power, right? Like, knowledge, unless you take it and do something. So, obviously we're sitting here on a podcast, we're having this conversation. Well, you might be somebody that listens to audiobooks. You might read a lot of books that are nonfiction, right? That are self-development, personal development, relationship style books, fitness, dieting, nutrition, whatever it is. You might be listening to audiobooks, you might be listening to podcasts on these topics, which is great. And I already told you, I really appreciate you being here listening to this one. But what I want to make sure that you do, and it might be possible that you need to listen to fewer or read fewer, so that you can actually start implementing some of the items, or start putting into practice some of the recommendations and some of the things that these authors and speakers and content creators are talking about, right? I just listened to, or I was listening to a podcast. Now I'm listening to a book by the same guy, and one of the concepts he talks about is time blocking. And I need to time block to plan out the time that I'm going to record these podcasts. And that's something that I used to do that I've kind of gotten away from. I've gotten more into creating lists, and then when I have the free time, just trying to check things off the list. But what I've learned is, that's not working as well as setting aside time for certain activities. Like, this is the time of the day when I'm going to do my emails. This is the time of the week when I'm going to do my podcasts. Instead of just having a list and saying, oh, this is the order in which I want to get things done throughout the week, because then things just don't get prioritized to the same. And you say yes to certain commitments, or you say yes to certain invitations, and stuff gets in the way when you don't have your time accounted for in your week. So that's something that I'm going to try to get back into implementing, is this concept of time blocking. But there again, it was something that I was reminded of on a podcast and in a book. But if I don't go implement that and nothing actually changes, then having that knowledge, what's the point? It's just taking up space in your head and at the end of the day. And so I guess what I want to leave you guys with this is, gather as much information as you want and as you can. But at the end of the day, please make sure you do something with that information, because it's going to improve your life. It's going to improve somebody else's life. And everyone's going to be better off for it, because you're going to put that knowledge into action. And that's where the magic can really happen, right? That's where the rubber meets the road, and where we can really see meaningful change or innovation or whatever take place when we take the information and take the knowledge that we have, implement it, and put it into action. So whatever you got to do, go knock it out today. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Code. If you've not already done so, man, please go leave us a review. That would be so helpful to get the show out to more and more people. And I hope to catch you on another episode. We'll see you next time.